Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. Earlier today, we shot a great interview with Wes Dooley from AEA, and we'll be bringing that to you in just a moment. But before we do that, I wanted to give you an update on something new from Avid. A few weeks ago, Rob McGay from Avid was in, and he showed us how to hook an HD Native card up to a Thunderbolt-equipped MacBook Pro, creating a portable system. Since we shot that Sweetwater Minute, Avid's made a new announcement, the HD Native Thunderbolt, and that's the unit I have sitting on my desk right here. Now, the HD Native Thunderbolt contains the same circuitry as an HD Native card that normally would go into a PCIe slot, but it connects to your computer by Thunderbolt. So it can be used with a MacBook Pro, it can be used with a Mac Mini, or with an iMac. It has a Thunderbolt port on the back, it has a serial port for connecting a Sync HD, and it has two ports for hooking up HD interfaces. Now, the HD Native Thunderbolt has a built-in headphone jack on the front with its own volume control, so you can use that for confidence monitoring when you're doing field recordings or you're out on location. You do have to hook it up to an HD interface for Pro Tools to operate, but it does have that jack on the front if the interface you're using doesn't have a built-in headphone port. Now, the HD Native Thunderbolt can draw its power from the Thunderbolt bus, or it can be powered using an external power supply as well if you like. It's a great solution if you need a portable HD Native system, or you can use it with a Mac Pro at home with a tower computer and run an HD Native system that way as well, because it will connect to all your IOs, and again, it has that extra feature of the headphone jack built in as well. It's a nice solution for taking HD Native into the Thunderbolt era. That's it for my update on Avid's HD Native Thunderbolt interface. Now let's check out my interview with Wes Dooley from AEA. Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This week on the Sweetwater Minute, we are joined by Wes Dooley from AEA. Wes, thanks for coming in. Appreciate having you here.
It's a real honor to be here.
Wow, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. So you were here this morning. You were demonstrating the different microphones, doing some shootouts with all of the ribbon microphones from AEA versus a variety of other mics. But tell us what we have set up here. We've got a bunch of different mics set up. What do we have going on?
Well, since RCA, which is the tradition we work on, we've been working on their mics since '76 when they got out of the business because it was way too small for a big outfit. But the 10 of us have taken it from '76 to '98, where we did all service work, to '98, where we started reissuing our favorite mics, the big ribbon RCAs, starting with the 44. And then we started working with what we call an 84, named after my favorite small diaphragm mic that sounds good on everything, the Neumann KM84s.
Sure.
And this is a version of that with active electronics so that you can run longer cable, and I can not have problems with dimmer noise at my wife's church where we go there and I record the bells, and that's a really exposed sound. So we do the active mics for really challenging situations. We do the passive mics so that, as George Massenburg said, you can put it in the bell of a ska trombone and it sounds wonderful.
Right. Now, just to be clear, this is, you mentioned the KM184, the KM84, but this is the R84 ribbon microphone. It's not a version of the KM84, it's a version of the RCA
This is
microphone.
not a condenser mic, this is a ribbon.
That has active electronics.
In 2005, we had 3 years of the R84, and then we started doing work on the active mics. And so we now have active and passive mics so that we have a mic for every application.
What was the attraction for you with the RCA microphones? What brought your interest to that?
Well, I was really lucky. I was doing a radio show of my own at the college station that got me hooked on this 50 years ago. And I got Clancy Brothers, Tommy Macomb to record my first thing, and I got into the Ice House, the Ash Grove, and the Troubadour, and then I wound up working on their sound systems.
Okay.
And so I live in Pasadena, which is convenient to the Ice House, and Wally Heider showed up with Frank DiMidio, the chief engineer at the time over at United Western. And Wally was working as an engineer there. And I had a 2-track, 1/4-inch, Ampex machine. I thought I was really going some.
Sure.
He had a 3-track 1/2-inch. And I helped them load the truck out. And they said, wow, could we pay you next week to come help record Johnny Rivers? I said, I'd do it for free. And they said, no, we want to pay you money to load and unload the stuff. Well, heck, I was only 21 or so, and now that I'm been through my 50s and into my 60s, I understand why you'd pay money for that.
Right.
So I got to hang around with Wally Heider.
Uh-huh.
And he introduced me to Gold Star, David Gold, Cal Harris, who left Gold Star to be chief at Detroit for Motown.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that when we put mics up for something like Stan Kenton, Wally always had us put ribbon mics up a bunch of places.
Mm-hmm.
And Stan, when I would do jazz festivals, and I was all Neumann because I was at this point also working for a Neumann dealer.
Okay.
Stan would always listen to what I did and say, really nice, Wes, but he always hired Wally. Now, Wally had great ears, and I figured that part of that had to do with what Wally said which was simply put, it's the microphones and where you put them that's the entire job of the recording engineer, other than making the musicians as comfortable as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So when we had a chief engineer after Wally had retired, who was into ribbon mics and knew the guy who had been in charge of manufacturing from 60 to 76,
Right.
who taught me in the basement of his house, John Sank, how to ribbon a 44 and such.
Mm-hmm.
Dick Napo said, well, let's do this. And I said, good idea. And it was just one of those really lucky things that I did,
Right.
that I said, good idea. And we started servicing A&M and Disney Character Voices and Capitol, all the people who had the mics and continued to use the mics.
Right.
And we didn't push it hard, but we got into the Coles 4038s, which no one was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned how to do 0.6 micron instead of 1.8 micron ribbon. And we just kept learning stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually the old guys we knew who made the mics originally were dying off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's uncomfortable to be one of the last people standing.
Right.
But we had worked on all this, and then in 98, we reissued our favorite mic because we had to make all our own spare parts.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to 100% spare parts for the 44.
Okay.
All the scoring guys, people like Eddie Van Halen, people like Linda Perry, they started adopting them, and we said, oh, this is good.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, of course, said, well, this is a great hobby. It's not going to send the kids to college.
Right.
So that's where I had Walter Sear
Mm-hmm.
say, you know, I really don't like the sound of these RCA Juniors, the 74s, which is a PA mic.
Mm-hmm.
Could you modify them? And I started playing with it. And the end result was I took parts I made for the 77s, but I made it a side address mic.
Mm-hmm.
And I figure 8 with the same ribbon, same tuning, same transformer as the 44, but a design that had less stray field, so it picked up less what we call tramp iron. When you put it down on a surface, it's not as strong a magnet to the outside world.
Okay.
And it turned out to be a really nice mic.
Mm-hmm.
And we named it after the, as I said, the RCA didn't have a 84.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, okay, KM84 Neumann was a real good condenser mic, small diaphragm. Let's name it an R84 because it does all those things really well and always sounds polite.
Right.
It's just, here's a condenser, small diaphragm, here's a ribbon, and as Joe Ciccarelli said, it's that various choices you have
Mm-hmm.
that allows you in this 100+ tracks digital age to make something that at the end sounds really vibrant.
Right. Right. So what was it? What is it about a ribbon mic versus a condenser or a dynamic that is so attractive to our ears? What is really the sonic response to? So what is it that made Stan Kenton prefer the ribbon recordings versus the condenser recordings?
Well, there were condenser mics up.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in saying, well, you got to do it all with one. It's an interesting exercise, but in fact, it's all of these mics being available. And RCA was into it first. They changed what Shakti and Gerlach had done for Siemens Telefunken from an Omni ribbon to a figure 8, and that was such a dramatic change because if I go around the corners here at 90 degrees, this thing's pretty much dead. We're right across here. We get to see each other. We get to work to each other. And of course, that's really nice when you're doing a lot of things from duets like Tim McGraw and Faith Hill did on all 129 shows with one of our 44s. And that's really handy in radio where you say, well, it's been really nice, but I got to go now. Yeah, I'm going now.
Right.
And you don't have to move very far. It's the microphone, the 44, the figure 8s that allowed people to have mic technique. Frank Sinatra was sometimes accused of being drunk because he always had his hand on the bottom of the mic. Now, that was so he knew where the mic was.
Okay.
He could manage his drinking just fine. What it was that if he was doing an intimate ballad, he'd bring it right up here and the bass would come up because these were the first mics with proximity effect. They were the first mics that you could move off axis and do things, some interesting things. The off axis sounded like on axis. The levels just changed. To answer your technical question, though, a ribbon is a very, in this case, thin, matches the air within 0.5 dB in terms of acoustical impedance. And we have a really long ribbon, the biggest ribbons around. We call them big ribbons because it's 2.35 inches long. And considering RCA 77 an inch long, Coles 4038 an inch long, Byers 0.8 of an inch, these are huge.
Right.
And this is part of why we can tune the things down at 16.5 hertz. Most ribbons are tuned somewhere in the 15 to 65 hertz range.
Okay.
The Coles are very nice, but they just drop like a rock at 30. We actually go flat down to 20. We tune them to 16.5. They still sound fine down to about 12. Wow. That means that the main problem with ribbons, which is if people stretch them by sneezing into them at 50 miles an hour, take them outside and use them, they can stretch, and then the tuning goes down. At some point, instead of good, they sound floppy. So until they sound floppy, what they do that's really nice, they're a low-tune system. All the energy is down under 200 hertz generally with these, and that just sounds like room tone.
Okay.
Well, room tone, we hear it all the time, and we just automatically say, room tone, okay, ignore that. At the other end, and it's the reason, along with the figure 8 pattern, that people from Eddie Van Halen to scoring people at 20th Century Fox consistently comment the mic sounds like being there. Eddie said it when he bought numbers 2, 3, and 4 because he was bored and wanted something to do after Valerie left. And he said, well, I bought the second one so I'd have stereo on Alex's drums because I can just walk over to his rehearsals every day. And I went through all the mics at 5150, and the only mic that sounded like standing there when you opened the fader was the 44 I had of yours. And stereo sounded better. And then I bought another pair because having two perspectives to A-B quickly was really convenient.
Nice.
And he told me he put his head down on the floor, he got a ladder, he got up high. He just tried everywhere to see, well, what sounds where? And it's that characteristic that he said so well that people called me once from 20th Century Fox and said, we want to order 3 of these. Well, that's really nice. Thank you.
Sure.
Why? And they said, oh, well, we pulled a pair of them out of literally a safe at 20th Century Fox, and we put them up in front of jazz drums in the setup that the stereo mic has a Bloomline pair just in a compact package. We set them up, and we opened the faders, hoping to get kind of a 1930s old-time jazz drum kit sound.
Right.
The composer and the engineer looked at each other and went, oh my, and compared it with the M49s up and went, oh. asked the drummer in and said, "What do you think?" "Oh, well, that's a good recording, and that sounds like what I do."
Uh-huh.
And they tried it with the rest of the food groups. We got from percussion to vocals.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody said the same thing. M49 sounded really good.
Mm-hmm.
The 44 sounded like what they heard when they played.
Thanks so much for coming in and spending time with us.
Thank you
demoing
so
the
much.
mics and sharing your vast knowledge that you have. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you.
Mutually.
Appreciate it, Wes.
Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Wes Dooley from AEA. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.